Uhuru! Uhuru, Sandra. I can't hear you, though. We're on the air.
Uhuru.
Reparations. Uhuru! We're here. We're here. We're getting used to things like technology, but
Uhuru, Chairwoman Penny, and to everyone who is with us now or with us later. You are listening to the White Lies Shattered Reparations in Action podcast, which airs on 96.3 FM, WBPU LP in St. Petersburg, Florida. And past episodes are available on Podbean and wherever you get your podcasts. So my name is Sandy, and I'm honored to be on the program today with African People's Solidarity Committee Chairwoman Penny Hess. The White
Uhuru?
Light Shattered, Uhuru, the White Light Shattered Reparations in Action podcast is produced by members of the African People's Solidarity Committee, of which I am proud to be one, the organization of white people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. We're the only show on the air by white people dealing with solidarity with African and colonized peoples. And we use this show to expose and shatter all the white nationalist myths and lies that are put forward in history books, universities, newspapers, about how the world got to be the way it is, and to point the way forward for other white people who want to be on the forward side of history. We believe that the liberation movements of African, Indigenous, Palestinian, and other oppressed peoples are the driving force of everything progressive and forward moving in this country and in the world. That reparations to African people is the key question of our times, and is one that demands action on the part of European or white people. So salute to our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela, and the African People's Socialist Party for the revolutionary leadership in fighting for Black power and African liberation, and showing that white people can have a principled relationship to African and colonized peoples by being organized under the leadership of the African Revolution. And I'd also like to salute Black Power 96 Radio, where this show is aired. Black Power 96 Radio is not just explaining the world, but changing it. And you can get the Black Power 96 mobile app on Google Play or the Apple App Store so that you can listen to it wherever you're located. And Black Power 96 is in the middle of their February fund drive, and we have a goal to raise at least $500 for this show, from you, our listeners on this program. So far we have raised $100 from last week's show. Thank you to comrades Johan, Becky, and Lisa for contributing last week. And we intend to raise at least 400 more by the end of this month. So please contribute to the White Lies Shattered show goal by going to blackpower96.org/reparations. And also like, subscribe, and share this podcast on whatever platform you are using. Help us to get the word out. So I am honored to be joined by Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru means freedom.
That's right. So Chairwoman Penny, before we get to our main topic of today's show, we do want to discuss some important news, starting with an imminent attack on Iran.
Yes. Apparently, the Trump administration is saying that they are mobilizing to attack Iran. Not the first time, they've bombed it before, but just apparently, from what I've seen, not in the New York Times or the mainstream colonial media, but on YouTube, and people saying that it is the largest military buildup in the Middle East in many, many years that's happening. So we know that, there's ships out there. There are also, of course, bombing ships that are working to get oil for Venezuela, and that is continuing. And that's another struggle, along with the kidnapping of the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, and the first combatant, Celia Flores. So we're going to talk about that situation, as an ongoing reporting that we're going to be doing on the show. But we should be outraged. We should be outraged that in our name, that,
Yes.
that this government is attacking and bombing the governments and attacking Cuba to to destroy the governments of the people that have fed, clothed, given health care to, educated the entire population, or in Cuba's case, for over 60 years, which is the system that we want to see here and around the world, which will only mean that there has to be power in the hands of the African working class and indigenous and colonized people.
Yeah, I mean, according to in terms of Cuba, and according to what the New York Times is writing, and, take that for what you will. But they are writing just today that Cuba is confronting the United States' first effective blockade since the Cuban Missile Crisis, and running out of fuel fast, pushing the nation towards a humanitarian crisis and its government to the edge of collapse. They hope, they wish. According to New York Times analysis of shipping data and satellite images, they're saying that Cuban tankers have hardly left the island shore for months, that oil-rich allies have halted shipments or declined to come to the rescue. The U.S. military has seized ships that have supported Cuba, and that in recent days, vessels roaming the Caribbean Sea in search of fuel for Cuba have come up empty or been intercepted by the U.S. authorities.
Yeah, I think that we need to be, first of all, again, I can't say it enough, we should be outraged because the US government expects the unity of the white population with any attack it is making on the colonized peoples on the planet Earth. And at the same time, it is the struggle led by the colonized against this vicious system of colonialism that is the driving force of the system. And we will be having more from forces who are working to defend Cuba on this program, on this show in the upcoming weeks.
That's going to be really good. That's going to be really powerful. And I know the Hands Off Uhuru campaign has done, a tremendous job at bringing the voices from the Cuban Revolution, the Venezuelan Revolution, to the American public, or to, to anyone who wants to hear the truth about the situation there. And there's another, if you want to move on to what's happening in Philly.
Yeah.
There's a huge struggle. There's been a huge struggle in Philly around a historical exhibit that was removed by the Trump administration and now is being restored in January.
Forcibly,
Yeah. So in January, members of the National Park Service removed an exhibit in Philadelphia that was titled "The President's House: Freedom and Slavery in the Making of a New Nation." That had been installed in 2010 and detailed the lives of the 9 enslaved people that George Washington brought to Philadelphia during his presidency, and explored his personal involvement in slavery. So the city of Philadelphia sued, and in February 10th, hundreds of people attended a rally at the exhibit site on Independence Mall, to demand its return. And then just a few days ago, February 16th, a judge ordered the Trump administration to restore the exhibit. I mean, we've seen a long history of struggle in Philadelphia.
Yes, the struggle. What it says is the foundation of the U.S. system, or the United States itself. It's a symbol of the founding of the United States, and I think that first of all, it is only appropriate and really important that it be a part of the memorial. That's the key part, that right at the quote founding of the U.S. are the bodies of enslaved African people. And I would just point out, by the way, that one of the women that is buried there, her name is Ona. And of course, our leadership, Deputy Chair Ona Zane Shatella, we have to salute her, is also named Ona. So I just think that, I think that's important because the African People's Socialist Party is carrying on the legacy of African people fighting for real power over their lives, not against racism, but against this colonial system built at their expense. They just want their freedom, their independence, their reparations, the return of their stolen resources.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, shall we move on to our main topic of today?
Yes, let's do.
Okay, well, all of these things that we're talking about is so much evidence of how the chairman has explained a system in crisis, the colonial mode of production, the ruling class in deep crisis, being exposed because it's unsustainable. It's a society built on slavery and genocide and continued to this day. So we want to talk about the crisis of the colonial ruling class with the release and the daily probing into the Epstein files.
Yes.
And Chairwoman Penny, I know you've really been following this issue. Do you want to sum
I've
it
been
up?
following it. Well, first of all, let me say that it's been out there in a way that's very public since 2002. So over 20 years, 24 years. But it actually began the first time some of the women, children, victims reported it to the FBI was in 1993. And the FBI did nothing. The same FBI that's attacking the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement for fighting for reparations to African people. So, I want to make that point. I have always found it very interesting because I am always interested in scandals of the system that they try to keep covered up, but then they just explode out. And really, when we look at it, and I want to talk about it because there's really nothing different than what this system is built on. I mean, we were just talking about slavery and genocide, which was all about sex trafficking and, sexual assault and rape and pillage and plunder. Right. So there's nothing new. I wanted to be able to say that, first of all, about 3.5 million pages of files, emails, court documents, flight logs, and other things connected to Jeffrey Epstein have been released by the government, and there's still millions of more documents that they refuse to release. And I want to go into that and talk about it because it exposes this absolutely vile ruling class and elite of this political system, this economic system that we live in, in this period. And I think that a lot of white people are very, very, moved by this. They're starting to understand how, something like this so-called scandal goes across the political spectrum, from left to right to, total leftists to, right wing. And it doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, they're all involved in this.
Well, one thing that's been so striking has been the vast numbers of people and how everybody is named in that. Everyone in the ruling class is named in that. Do you want to name some names?
Well, let me read the summation of the case first. I just want to read a little bit from what CNN was saying about it. So this was on their site. It's saying that that Trump had ever since he was returned to the White House, he's been saying he's going to release these files. But the number one person that's in the files is Donald Trump. He's named, I've read, up to 30,000 times in these files. And so, you know, I don't know if it's part of his dementia or what, but he definitely, you know, is part of this whole, the exposure. And it was saying in the CNN, it's summing up, in a memo released last week, the department and FBI, that's the so-called Justice Department, claimed that there was no evidence that Epstein had a list of powerful men who participated in his alleged underworld of sex trafficking and pedophilia. And the memo said Epstein was not murdered in the New York jail cell. So just to say that, first of all, years ago, they released the Epstein Black Book with all the names in it. That's been out for many, many years. So now they're saying it doesn't exist. And I guess what Bondi, you know, released is redacted. What's redacted are the names of the perpetrators. The names of the victims were visible.
And the videos of the victims.
Yes, the videos. Yes, exactly. You know, and so, and there, you know, it's also just to say about it that there's so much to say about it, because who was this guy? Who was Jeffrey Epstein? He was, you know, as it has been shown, was clearly connected to U.S. intelligence, quote unquote. The people that attacked
Israeli intelligence, right?
Yeah,
and the Mossad.
U.S. and Mossad. Yeah, and that the people involved, many of the people actively involved in it, the perpetrators, are Zionists in one way or another. Yeah. You know, who are people that are involved in upholding, you know, Israel, and of course that means the U.S. because Israel is a project and a front of the U.S. government in the Middle East. So it's saying that it's been said for a long time, in 2019, that Epstein was arrested I think in August of 2019, and a few weeks later he was found dead in his cell at I think it was the MCC, the Metropolitan Corrections Center in New York City, which is supposed to be a very brutal prison or jail. And it was said that he committed suicide, which is, everybody knows that that's not true, because he had more, he had all this data, videos, and you know, information on the ruling class and all of the brutal things that they had done especially on the front of you know, attacking young children and teenagers, men, girls, and boys, by the way. And, you know, all this was out there. So he was found dead. It was said that he committed suicide, and that everything shows that that was not the case. So, you know, it's just a typical kind of U.S. government situation that it's had. And the question is that they ask in the CNN article, who was Jeffrey Epstein? Epstein was a New York native. He started his career with a brief stint as a teacher at a prestigious private school. It didn't take long for him to move into investment banking, even though he hadn't graduated from college. And he was working at first at Bear Stearns before starting his own firm in 1982. At his firm, Epstein exclusively took on clients worth more than $1 billion each. He just went out there and started doing this. That doesn't happen that way. By the 1990s, Epstein had managed to accumulate estates and apartments in several countries, according to court documents, even a private island in the Caribbean, and was rubbing shoulders with some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world. I just want to read a little bit more. Details of Epstein's alleged secret life first emerged in 2005 when several underage girls accused him of offering to pay for, quote, massages or sex acts at his Palm Beach mansion. Grand jury testimony unsealed years later included accusations that Epstein, who was then in his 40s, had, quote, raped teenage girls as young as 14 years old. Epstein avoided federal charges in the case by striking an agreement to serve 13 months in prison on state prostitution charges, not federal, and to register as a sex offender. A Justice Department review later found that the then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, who oversaw the agreement, exercised, quote, poor judgment in striking the deal. So basically, Epstein was given a deal where if he pled guilty on state charges, not federal charges, he would be able to get out of prison. He was kept in prison for 13 months, but he could go to his house every morning. He only had to sleep there. And they say that every morning, a huge limousine showed up at the jail and picked him up, and he went to his palatial home in West Palm Beach, or Palm Beach, I don't know which one, but one of them is very grand and the other is working class. And continued to do what he was doing, raping children during that time. So nobody's ever seen a deal like that. And when they asked Alex Acosta, why did you, what about Epstein? He goes, that's above my pay grade.
Exactly. I mean, they're
He's
all in
with
on
intelligence.
it. They're all in on it, and they're all in on the cover up. I mean, Bondi, remember when she was like, yes, we have the black book and we're about to release it. And then she's like, no, we don't have the black book.
I know. And then she starts saying, but what are you talking about? The stock market is at 54,000. What, it's up to 54,000. Like it has nothing to do. Okay, so what?
Right. Right.
Non sequitur. Typical.
And like you say, he had no basis for, well, one of the things that really bothers me is how the New York Times, in several articles I've seen them refer to him as a disgraced financier.
Yeah.
As opposed to, the rapist, pimp, convicted child trafficker, disgraced financier. And how was he a financier with no training, no credentials, anything, just by hooking people up, compiling blackmail tapes on them, manipulating and maneuvering, just a complete scam. But that's how the whole system works. So it worked. Right.
Well, also, he only had one client, and that client was Leslie Wexner, who is another Zionist, very invested in Israel, but he lives in Ohio. And Leslie Wexner is somebody that, if you've ever been to a mall, all these stores like Victoria's Secret and The Limited and all those stores are owned by him. And that's how he supposedly made billions of dollars. So apparently, according to what's put out, Epstein hooked up with Leslie Wexner and began keeping his books. He became the bookkeeper or whatever, the accountant for Wexner. And Wexner gave him power of attorney to do whatever he wanted. So, whatever was, he was doing to be able to move in these circles, it had to have been backed by the United States government. It was not something that just some individual could or maybe even would do. So, it's saying that in dozens of additional women in 2018 alleged that Epstein had abused them. That reporting pushed the so-called Justice Department to open a new investigation into Epstein, and he was indicted in New York with, quote, sex trafficking dozens of underage girls. Less than 1 year later, he pleaded not guilty to those federal charges. But then, after he was arrested at the airport coming in from his plane from Paris. Let me just say, he had homes, a giant mansion in Paris. He had a whole island in the Caribbean where he flew, and he had his own planes. And the planes were called the Lolita Express. And the Clintons, Hillary and William Jefferson Clinton, as Chairman calls him, used the Lolita Express to make a quote, official trip of the Clinton Foundation to Africa. They used his plane for that. And, they're just all tied into this. And, it's really clear that it was endorsed by, and of course, Clinton is in the Epstein files numerous times, countless times. And, a number of key people are in it.
Well, and all the different, the massive wealth that you just described, the planes, the islands, the properties, where did that wealth come from? The exploitation, brutal violence against children. That's where that money came from. All of that money came off of,
Yeah, he also had a place I think it was in New Mexico, called the Zorro Ranch, way out in the country, where hideous things, according to the files, where they actually killed babies. And he had a plan, and this is for real, that he wanted to impregnate scores of women with his sperm to be able to have a higher level of human beings. And God. That he was very,
Musk
very...
Musk is doing that too. That's what they're all into. More babies with my sperm. Ugh.
I know. And Musk is very high up in the Epstein files. Musk is in there. Bill Gates is in there. They're all there. They're all there. The entire ruling class. And it's just really, really, really clear that this was a major thing, again, backed by the U.S. government. But just to say that, Epstein had properties on the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, in this entire island called Little St. James in the Caribbean that he owned, in Paris, a giant house, and he had in New York City the biggest, largest townhouse mansion in the entire New York City that exists today on the Upper East Side. And that's where he carried out, he would just fly around from place to place to, in every place. And in order to be able to do that, he had his coordinator, his planner, his I don't know what you call it, his main administrative assistant was Ghislaine Maxwell, who's British, whose father had been Robert Maxwell, who was a Zionist, who was a Jewish man who had escaped the Holocaust. Maxwell wasn't his name, in Czechoslovakia after the Second Imperialist War, during the Second Imperialist War. He came to the United States. He was very, apparently, able to adopt a British accent, which he did, changed his name to an ultimate British name, and became a billionaire with all kinds of things. He owned all kinds of media outlets in the US and in Britain, and many other things. I think he owned the Daily Mail. He owned radio and TV stations in the US and in Britain. And he was also a very staunch Zionist, and he died mysteriously by, quote, falling off his yacht in, I believe, the 1990s, and very conveniently. But when he was, so he was off. I mean, he had to have been, but he was, anyway,
Well,
go ahead.
Well, speaking of the British, then we just saw the show arrest of Prince Andrew.
Yeah, exactly. And he was involved. I wanted to say
Heavily.
something. I wanted to say something.
Maxwell?
No, I just want to say something else on Robert Maxwell, that he was buried on the Mount of Olives in Israel. That is only where top officials of the Zionist state are buried. Mm-hmm. So, it was very clear that, that he was part of that. And, it's just it tends to be mysterious, but it is what the US government has done over and over and over again. And it's something that went on during the administrations of Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump won, Biden, and Trump again. For all of those years, the presidents knew about it. They were involved in it. He was doing this, everything that Epstein was doing was what the US government was carrying out through the CIA, Mossad, and all of these things that are used to crush the struggles of the people against colonialism. So, yeah, they said there was over 1,000 children, at least, who were ravaged, who were victims of this brutal attacks on them. Turkey, the government I don't know if it's the government of Turkey, because they say they're investigating it, but hundreds of children were sent to Epstein from Turkey, from the country of Turkey. Again, he did this in New York, in the Caribbean, in his townhouse, in the Zorro Ranch, and he also had a palatial home in Miami and a home in Paris. So he had at least 5 homes. And to also say that he said he only wanted white girls and boys.
Well, chickens come home to roost, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly.
Before we continue, we just want to remind people that Black Power 96 Radio is engaged in its February fund drive. And the station is raising funds in addition to operational expenses that the fund drive pay for twice a year. The station is raising money to get a new transmitter. So the Black Power 96 has been operating with the same transmitter from when it first started in 2017. And it won't last forever. They don't make things to last forever under colonial capitalism. They make things to last for a certain period of time, and then you have to buy another one. So we got to make sure that Black Power 96 stays on the air, because this station is, broadcasts the material, this program, the voice of the African working class, the voice of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the voices of yes. other programs. Charles Barron and Inez Barron have a Pacifica radio program that is also aired on Black Power 96 out of New York. Other people, programming, but also the local programmers right there who come in and volunteer and do their show every week, and the incredible work of station manager DJ Eddie Maltzby. I see that Lisa has brought that picture up on screen. That's Eddie Maltzby Jr., who you see right there, 100% blind, hardest working man in radio, best blind DJ, and keeps the station going. And This is a project of the nonprofit African People's Education and Defense Fund. So when you make a contribution, it is tax deductible. We're trying to raise another $400 just from this show. The station overall has $12,000 goal for the month of February. And let's contribute to that. White Light Shatter, Reparations in Action. Let's put our money where our mouth is. Reparations in Action means let's contribute to this fund drive this month. So please do go to blackpower96.org/reparations and make your contribution right now.
Uhuru, thank you so much. And I want to put in $100 to this fund drive. So I'm going to do that. I'm not seeing a list. I don't know if we have a list of people who are donating or how we see it, but you know what? We should have checked that. But there might be a way.
Before the show's over, we'll
we
get
will.
that.
Okay. Okay, great. I really want to support Black Power 96.3 and to know that here in St. Louis, there's going to be another Black Power 9. Well, I don't know if it'd be 96.
I understand it will be Black Power 94. It's going to be broadcasting on 94.1 right there at her house from another sister nonprofit organization.
I really appreciate that.
So, yeah.
Well, what I love about it is the slogan, not just explaining the world, but changing the world. And I just feel like we have to look at this world that we're in, and we can't just be shocked or dismayed or depressed. We have to say, we can change the world. We can change the world. And everything that the African People's Socialist Party is doing is fighting to build power for the African working class, which is absolutely antithetical to everything that exists here. Because to struggle against colonialism, to have the interest of the African and colonized working class is to have the interest of the people, not parasitic, not blood-sucking. I mean, truly, the system is a vampire. You couldn't have a better analogy, metaphor for the system. It is that. And when the chairman says the colonial mode of production, what he's talking about is the system is built on genocide. It's not an anomaly. There's something that people want to put out, that white people want to put out, that colonialism was a certain period of time, or it was a certain bad policy. And what the chairman says is, no, it's the essence, it's the DNA of the political system that we live in. Let me say a little bit more about this parasite.
There's so much more to say.
Yes. So, first of all, again, this was not an anomaly, even in what the story is of the Epstein, the assault, the plunder, the rape, the torture, the terror, the murders. We know that this was what was done to indigenous children. I read a book years ago, Sandy, about how during the gold rush, which was white people coming to California to steal the golden resources of the indigenous people and to steal the land. And that's how the state of California got started, by carrying out genocide of indigenous people. And they did have, apparently during the height of the gold rush in the 1850s, they were slaughtering at least 1 million indigenous people a year. And this is how California, everybody's like, oh, let's go to California. It's free, it's liberal, it's lifestyle. And and it's based on a horrible reality. I remember when I lived in California under the leadership of the party. We lived in Oakland for 20 years. And I remember when it was the 150th, what would that be, anniversary of the state of California. And they had these kind of tribunals or something. They had something where indigenous people were, and it was on NPR. It was kind of like being broadcast. And I remember some of the testimony of people saying, yes, my grandparents had a coat made out of the hair of indigenous people. I mean, and just, just saying these atrocities that white people carried out, because if we're talking about genocide, it's hideous, it's horrible, and it's all of the things that we're talking about. I remember reading about how the gold miners in the Sierras they kidnapped indigenous girls for them, for a, sex trade to attack, to be able to use them as slaves, enslaved indigenous women for their whatever, sexual assault and rape. And so, this is how it goes on. And we've read about in the past the fact that there's been children in these quote boarding schools under indigenous quote unquote boarding schools. And basically what the US did and Canada did was to be able, and I think we've had some shows on White Lies Shattered about it, but they kidnapped indigenous children and forced them into these so-called schools. They took them from their parents at a very young age. They made them speak English. They made them cut their hair and wear, white people's clothes. And they were also tortured and raped. And the number of children's bodies buried under where these boarding schools, quote unquote, were, is, a lot of indigenous people, especially in Canada, are going through and forcing the government to open those up and find, the remains of the children that were there. I mean, this is the history. There's a movie
there's a movie now about the Dozier School in Florida, where all unmarked graves of African children have been unearthed. But yeah, so it puts the context for what we're talking about with the Epstein files. It's not new.
No, it isn't. It's what this system has done. I mean, if you want to say, it's so easy to say the words, even that this country was built on slavery and genocide. But the fact is, when you look at it, it is the most hideous, vile, just hideous thing that we can imagine.
And even today, you mentioned about the indigenous girls and women, and I don't have the figures in front of me, but they are the largest group of murdered, missing. It's ongoing today.
Yes, it is.
Kidnapping, torture, and murder of indigenous women.
That is absolutely going on today, and it is never covered by the colonial media at all. If you wanted to find something out about it, you might have to go to YouTube, and look and see what you can find. But yes, that is so true, that it is going on today.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned, this minor thing, but you mentioned about the redacting of the names from the Epstein file. And I read a couple of things. One, that they're so inept that they, first of all, used like Microsoft Word or something to redact. So if you just open it up in Word and it started undoing, or, you could actually get to that. And then also read that some British, I don't know if they were activists or journalists, were like sending to Pam Bondi and other people, oh, I see you lost some of the things, or some of this information was missing. Well, here I have the complete copy. Here it is with everything to be shown.
Yeah, apparently it was very easy to unredact it at first. I don't know if they've changed that or not, but I've seen people on YouTube talking about that.
Yeah.
So, and I just think about how Chairman Omali Shatella was attacked, and they wanted to put him in prison for 15 years or more. They wanted him to pay at least $250,000 per charge, accused of, quote, being a Russian agent, which is absurd, acquitted of being a Russian agent, but then convicted of conspiring to be a Russian agent, which, how does it work that you get convicted of the
you were
a charge?
talking about it. You really wanted
Yeah.
to be, but you just didn't quite become it.
Yeah, and that Jesse Neville and I, both members of the African People's Solidarity Committee, were part of the Uhuru Three. We came under attack by the U.S. government as part of the attack on Chairman Omali Shatella. They thought that they could separate us. They thought that we would, go along with them, but they were wrong. They were completely wrong. So that is really powerful, and it shows an incredible testimony to the leadership of Chairman Omali Shatella and and his tireless work for really 60 years in the world to bring about real power in the hands of the African working class. So, we have to do something. We have to do something. This is what it seems like everywhere I go, people want to talk about this thing. They want to talk about how, that we have to do something to change this. This world is disgusting, and it's truly things like the Epstein files that help expose it to white people. You can't have any illusions that well, this is a good system gone bad, because this is the essence of it. So, Sandy, we have raised some resources here. So do you want to talk about who has given?
Sure. So this show, there's quite a few listeners, regular listeners to this show, who are sustaining members of Black Power 96, and we don't have the full list for that for this week. Next week we will be in the final episode of the month. We definitely want to go through and thank those people. So far, we have a total of $200 that's been raised towards the $500 goal of this show. So from you, Chairwoman Penny, thank you so much. And also our comrade Johan in St. Pete, our comrade Becky in Minneapolis, our comrade Lisa.
Jesse said that he's going to donate $25.
And 25. So we are up to 225. That means we have 275 left to raise. We also have a number of comments in the chat from some of the people that are viewing with us now. From Wendy Lee has made a number of comments, including, colonialism is a vampire, and reparations and the revolution is the wooden stake through its heart. She's also recommending a book that is coming out this year called How White America Learned to Lynch Black Children, exposing the colonial crimes. Yeah, and also from Indigo Land 14 says, Uhuru, this is an analysis of Epstein and Wexner that the people need. Build the movement for material solidarity with African, indigenous, and colonized people. Overturn the colonial mode of production now. So thank you for those comments and those donations. And please go to blackpower96.org/reparations to support this show. Let's keep this show on the station, and let's keep this station on the air.
Uhuru, let's indeed. And you can still continue to donate at any time. You can go to, can you say again where people go to donate?
To blackpower96.org/reparations. That's where you can go to donate. And Chairwoman Penny, you are so well read and knowing about this case, but also I just want to really salute your leadership in being the first person who really heard and took up the call back in 1976. We're almost to September of this year, which will be the 50th anniversary of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And all that time you have fought for the stance of white people and, taking a principled stance in solidarity to overturn this system that would produce and allow and accommodate a Jeffrey Epstein that is run by the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world and all of these hideous genocidal pedophiles. Do you want to just say something more about, the significance of, there's a lot of ways you could respond to this Epstein thing, and everyone's calling for justice, but what does real justice mean?
Well, it means that we have to be organized. We do have to change the world. But we're not going to do it by talking about it or just sitting around in a cafe and exposing something. We only can do it in an organized movement, because when the African liberation movement, when African workers are fighting for power, this system can't stand. It can't continue to function. The struggle of the African working class is against colonialism. It is what will overturn it. And we have to be organized. It is really, really important. The thing that's so important about APSC and totally unique is that it is the white organization under the leadership of African people, the African liberation movement. And we have a particular responsibility and assignment. Our assignment is to go into the white community and tell this truth to other white people, and to organize for reparations to African people, both in historically and in reality, by raising resources for the ongoing programs of the Black Power Blueprint that is building here in St. Louis under the leadership of Deputy Chair Onozine Shatella, that is building a cafe, Uhuru Bakery Cafe, the basketball court, the African Independence Workforce Program, and so many other a garden, and an incredible farm. They're building an actual farm to bring resources and healthy food to the African community here. And there's just incredible support. The tornado in May of 2025 touched down right in the middle of these programs, right in the middle of the heart of the African working class community. And the first thing, the Chairman Omali Shatella, Deputy Chair, they were out going door to door, knocking on the doors of the people to make sure that the people were okay, to invite people to the Uhuru House, to come out and get organized and fight for the resources. And this city has in every way frozen resources to the African community, especially in general over the years. And we'll talk about that more, but it is something that that they are doing to freeze the resources of the city, or that the city would have to go to the African community. And I know it's time for our announcements now, so I'm going to turn it over to whoever is making the announcement.
I will do that, but I just want to echo what you said about, people are so, we are all rightfully alarmed about the news with Epstein, with the military aggression all around the world, with the U.S. military occupation of cities across the U.S. And what we've heard the chairman say is, yes, we're out there protesting. Yes, we're out there demanding justice, and we must go beyond protest and build. So
exactly.
That's what the Uhuru movement is doing, and is on course for over 50 years. And it's just, it's really an honor to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Yes, it is, Uhuru.
So here's how you can be a part of it. Again, donate today, make your contribution. We have one more week. I think we're just about halfway there. And thank you to Wendy Leah 66, just put in $10. So we're just about half.
Great.
Yeah, so that we're almost halfway to our goal. So next week, if you didn't get to donate, if you can still donate today. If you're looking on YouTube, you can. If you are listening on the FM, shout out to all of the radio listeners in St. Pete, and you still have a opportunity to go and make that contribution. Or if you are in St. Pete, so many people, I'm told, just show up at the door, 1245 18th Avenue South. Just go to the studio. Mr. Eddie's there every day. Just bring their contributions right down there. You get to see Mr. Eddie if he's not too active right there on the air, or if some of the other volunteers are there. You may have a chance to take a peek in the studio and make those contributions. So definitely support Black Power 96. Yeah. And just as in St. Louis, where the station is, where the Black Power Blueprint is pushing back gentrification, pushing back the expansion of the NGA, the Pentagon of the West, in St. Pete as well, Black Power 96 has been the voice opposing gentrification, supporting the Black community that is under heavy gentrification. I mean, people are being driven out in such an aggressive way, and this is the station that remains the voice of the Black community in St. Pete. So please do donate. And then we have some other ways and for you to participate. So Jerome, Penny, I know you are in St. Louis and you've been very involved with the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition to organize a very exciting film showing tomorrow of the Alabama Solution, which I watched.
Yeah, in St. Louis, yeah.
Yeah. The film itself is available on HBO Max. So you can go and watch it, borrow somebody's login. Oh, I didn't say that. And then
no.
I did. It was a joke. And then but they will be showing the actual film that they were granted permission from the producers to do a community showing. It's the first community showing that's been in the Black community of St. Louis. This is the most heartrending, incredible film from inside of the prison in Alabama. People took their cell phones and surreptitiously recorded what actually goes on. And this is really powerful. And if you're not, whether you're in St. Louis, so if you are in St. Louis, I have to squint to read this. It's at the Jubilee Community Church, 4231 North Grand Boulevard in St. Louis.
Yeah, very close to the Uhuru House. Very close to the Uhuru House. Basically, sort of around the corner.
Great. So that's tomorrow at 2 p.m. But if you are not there, you have to watch the film on your own. We cannot begin it at 2 p.m. because, copyright. But there will be immediately following the actual film showing a stream of the panel. So there's going to be a panel discussion with Chairman Omali Shatella, Zaki Baruti of the Universal African Peoples Organization. Also, Ms. Clara Brooks, who is the sister of one of the Africans who is still locked up there and is featured in this film. So that would be very powerful. And then also family members of Mafundi Lake, who is the legendary Alabama prison organization for which the Burning Spear newspapers sponsor prisoner program is named. So there's a RSVP there.
Yes.
Maybe somebody can put it in the chat, but if you're listening online, if you're listening on the FM, go to tinyurl.com/Alabama Solution, and then you can register, and then you'll get the notice when that comes up and the panel discussion starts. So remotely, we all get to watch the panel discussion. If you have a chance to watch the film ahead of time, please do.
You can watch it on YouTube or Facebook.
Great.
But
and
I forgot
will
where.
Be on the Uhuru, which one? Probably on the Burning Spear TV.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And then one more big announcement. Be there or be square, April 17th to the 19th, the African People's Socialist Party International Plenary. This is the first plenary since 2022. Normally it happens every year in between congresses of the African People's Socialist Party. And it was delayed with the 2.5 years Hands Off Uhuru campaign. And I know we're over time, but go to APSP if you want more information or to register to attend. Go to apspplenary.org. I'm going to be there.
Uhura.
Uhuru.
All right. So that's all for today. We want to thank everybody. Uhuru, unity through reparations.
Reparations.